Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Move, Crush, Count. I'm your host, Scott Joseph. Today's episode is brought to you by J&L Marketing. J&L is a digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competitors so you don't have to outspend them. With their innovative approach, J&L helps their clients move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. Make sure to visit the website at jnlmarketing.com so you can see how they can help you outsmart your toughest competitors. Let's get started today by introducing our guest. Today, I've got a co-host with me. He's on the show frequently. I don't know. That's you, Sandy. So he hails from the state from my music idol, Bruce Springsteen, the Garden State of New Jersey. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Sandy Cerami, better known as the Solutionist. Mm-hmm. Sandy does an incredible job. Let me get this. It helps when I get this microphone over here.
By the way, Jason, it can only get better from here, buddy. Don't worry.
You should see some of mine. It's worse. Half time I notice 5 minutes late, I'm already muted. And I'm like, I've been talking for 5 minutes.
All right. Well, it's so funny.
One adage I got to share. If you can't laugh at Scott, who can you laugh at? Right. So
let me tell you what's funny is the last episode we had Steven Rosler from Drive Centric on here, and I realized that we got through the entire intro, and I realized, it helps when you actually hit the go live button. We had to we had to start over.
That is great.
But let me get back to the Solutionist real quick here. Sandy does an incredible job helping individual clients and companies maximize their retention, their performance, their production, their profitability. But you know what he does better than anyone? He comes on here and makes me look younger. And as long as he keeps doing that, we're going to keep having him back. So, welcome back, Sandy.
It's great to be here, Grandpa. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's right. I that'll happen officially in August. Sandy and I were honored to have with us Jasen Rice. He is the CEO of LotPop. And this is a company that's revolutionizing how dealers manage their used car departments and their inventory. And they're doing this with a lot of innovative strategies that help dealers maximize their sales and profits. Jasen is a well-respected thought leader in this industry. He has a wealth of knowledge that he's going to share with us today. We appreciate that. Thank you. And he'll be discussing how the most successful dealers are tackling the biggest challenges in this market and driving growth. So, Jasen, welcome. This is your first time on. Welcome to Move, Crush, Count.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
The show just got a whole lot smarter, Jason. The show got a whole lot smarter with you here.
Well, Sandy, you
am I balancing that out? That is great. You said something.
Right. I got to separate you two.
Yeah, well, you are. That's it.
You said something about what Jasen and his team are doing with LotPop that I think is a great thing to note. Is that he's employing strategies, and what he's doing is amplifying the power and the impact of those strategies using technology. And I think that he has the right approach. He starts with a fundamentally sound business strategy as it relates to optimizing used car performance, and then uses the technology to accomplish that versus the opposite, which is the way most dealers in the business look at things initially. It's like, it's a great tool, or, it's a great gadget. You do it the way it should be done, which is starting with a great strategy and philosophy in terms of how to run the business.
Yeah. And I'll do a shameless plug here, but I did do a WTF is my book, but it's called Work the Facts. To your point is, these are strategies that are factual situations on your lot. I bring that up because a lot of times we get tied up in the market data or what MMR says, and none of that, not that it's not factual, it's raw data, it's there in your face, but you can't control it. You can't do anything about it. I've seen cars listed online inaccurately. MMR auction data doesn't include like no sales. It doesn't include, the rental car companies driving up values. It's just I don't know the last time a dealer was able to take a car to the auction and get MMR. Usually it's less, other than when the period of time when cars are appreciating. So let's control what you can control. And that's basically what's happening on your lot. And so,
great point.
Yeah.
So today we're going to do something a little bit different.
Okay.
And the reason we're doing that is a lot of our audience, not everybody's in the auto industry, right? So they're probably out there thinking, why in the heck should I be listening to Jasen talk about different ways to increase sales and profit for used cars? Especially if they're not in the industry, right? So obviously, if you're in the industry, this is going to be a show you definitely do not want to miss, especially with today's market conditions. But as a lot of you know, Sandy and I, and maybe you don't, Sandy and I coordinate the Business Bourbon and Cigars Leadership Retreat. We've done several of these now for the automotive industry. And what we do is we bring successful people together, leaders. They share their strategies, their experiences. It's all designed to help people grow. Today's episode, we're going to mix up the questions a little bit. So what we're going to try to do, once we kind of set the stage with the way the industry is right now and why this is so important of a topic, but we really want to simulate what we do at this retreat in terms of the mastermind breakout groups that we do. And it's a technique, I think, that can be applied to any business. Any business leader can use it for any business vertical, any industry, and it'll help them solve their toughest challenges or help them achieve their biggest goals. So whether you're in automotive industry or not, make sure you keep listening or watching, however you're consuming this. Get your notepad out, your remarkable tablet, start applying these questions to your own business. And just so everybody knows, this is being shot and streamed live right now through YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Some of the comments we get depends on if you gave permissions or not. Some we do not. So if we don't get to any questions or don't get to your question on the show, it's just because it didn't come through, and we'll have to go on the social channel that you were communicating with us after the show and communicate then. Mm-hmm. So let's dive in. So, Jasen, just so people are familiar with the challenges today, let's set this stage in the current marketplace, kind of explain why optimizing used car sales and profits is more important now. And maybe that means you talk a little bit about how the used car market's changed in the changed in recent years, and how this is impacting dealerships and what you see kind of moving forward in the next 6 to 12 months.
Used car market, I think it's going to be, I wouldn't say the toughest. It's going to be tricky for a while. Because again, we came through a phase where the values were so high and cars were actually appreciating. That's no longer the case. They're depreciating. Matter of fact, Facebook a couple of days ago, I shared probably 6, 7, 8 cars, anywhere from an F-150 to Honda Pilots that have been reduced anywhere from $3 to $10,000 since November on their retail pricing. So here's the thing. A lot of dealers that have bought cars in October and November, they're dropping these prices significantly. The bad thing is you turn around and wholesale's up and they're like, prices are coming back up. The market's coming back. Right. Well, that wholesale's fine. But until you buy that car and put it back on the retail market, once you do that, you got to realize you're competing with a guy that had a car since November that's dropped his price $5,000. And you either got to wait till that car sells for your price to be relevant. But by the time that happens, you're the age car and you got to start blowing it out. So it's going to be the tightest margin spread that we're going to have for a little bit, because it's busy right now. Matter of fact, my wife and I are shopping for a car for her. And there's a couple cars we've seen and they've already sold real quick. And I could see it on the dealer's lot. They seem pretty busy, but that's at normal tax season. Problem is we track it through Google Trends and stuff, and we've tracked it for probably close to 10 years now as shopper indexes. And you can get it right off of Google Trends, google.com/trends. Just type in used cars and look at year-over-year comparison where we were this time last year to this year. On a scale of 100, last year is probably about 78. And right now we're like in the 60s. So shopper activity is lower. Now, if you do it a 5-year span, last tax season was 20% lower than the previous tax seasons. Okay. Shopper index is 99, 98, February, March for the last 5 years. Last year was 78 or something like that, 75. So currently right now we're below last year's activity. So the tricky part is there is less cars. Hard part is I don't know if it's less cars. There's not less cars on the road. There's 20 million more used cars on the road. I mean, if a car's on the road, it's a used car. So there's more cars. There's never been more cars on the road. So there's cars available. We've sold 13.8 million new cars. That's the equivalent of 2011. Are we whining about shortage of cars? No. Okay, so there's plenty of cars out there. They're just not hitting the lots yet. And we track that national listings and local listings on autotradercars.com for our dealers. And we look year over year. We can say, hey, yeah, there's a 10% drop in your market. But I don't know if it's shortage of cars. One, I give you an example again. My wife, her lease is up in 6 months. Well, these manufacturers decide to screw with the contracts. And what I mean by that, I've always loved leasing because I could either sell it, buy it, trade it, or walk away. I had those choices. Now what's my choice? I could buy it or trade it in on a new Volvo or a used one, or certified one. But I'm ready to buy right now. I actually went to a Volvo store. They had a used car I wanted to buy. They wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't let me do it because I had 6 months left. And unless it was on a new Volvo or a certified, I can't turn this thing in. So either I buy another car and have 2 payments for the next 5 months, or I sit and wait till this lease is. I was like, what's the difference? If I'm going to hand you the keys in 6 months, why don't you just take the car now?
You know the difference.
Yeah, they won't. And it's probably going to be a $5,000 cost to them. $3,000 to $5,000 by the time in 6 months from now. Good point. Of what the value is going to be. Because
what do you think? What do you think is the motive behind that, Jason? I'm curious because I have thoughts.
Because they want the car. Volvo wants the car. I told them. I said, because I talked to the financial. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "I've always when I signed this agreement, I could trade it in, sell it, or walk away. I want to trade it in." Well, no. In the description, Volvo owns this car, and at any point in time, if they want to do what's best for Volvo, and we don't have cars, so we want the car back. So even if I trade it to a Volvo store, that means the Volvo store gets it, not Volvo. Volvo wants it and then tries to sell it back to these dealers. And so my car has to sit for 6 months. It's not in the market, but it could be in the market right now. And I think if you look, mine's a 2020. So a lot of these 19 to 2020s where their leases are up, they're not going to be really, it's usually at July, August, summer sales-a-thons that a lot of people go in and buy a new car and lease them. It's going to be June, July. That's when ours is up 6 months from now. Our last payment's June. And we're going to turn the keys in. You're going to see an influx. And by then, new cars are already up 30, 40, 50%. New cars are up. And anybody that's wanting to trade in their car right now that bought it in the last couple of years, they're going to need there's already incentives on new cars.
Yep.
So they're going to need a $3,000 to $5,000 rebate to get out of their car. Yep. So they're going to have to buy new. So then more trades are coming in, more leases are going to come in. It's just going to be a weird next 6 to 12 months for dealers.
Well, it's funny because we're going to have to deal with the tail end of the COVID hysteria. And I mean that in a positive way for the market. And then trying to work our way back to some sense of normalcy in terms of what a true supply and demand market looks like. What a incentivized supply and demand market looks like versus a true supply and demand market. And there is conflict, as you know, with the parties involved. So
you throw in,
which is the OEMs.
You throw in the possible housing market. I'm watching that's going down. You throw in interest rates going up. You throw in inflation,
credit card bubble. I mean,
that's what I was going to ask you, and maybe it's just a combination of it all, right? Is it in terms of what do you think is going to play the biggest role on all this volatility with used cars? Is it the economy? Is it interest rates? Is it increased in new car inventory?
Well, a couple things. Don't get fooled by wholesale's up. Okay, well, that doesn't mean retail's going to be up. Okay, that's one. The customers have to be there to buy it. Dealers are willing to be at the lane and buy it, but doesn't mean they could turn around and sell it to Joe Schmo. So I shared 2 headlines the other day on February 3rd. One said, January jobs blowout, record 160 million employed. So record unemployment. And then the next headline, to your point, Sandy, credit card debt hits record near $1 trillion. And I said, maybe these 2 headlines have something in common. Maybe people are going back and getting jobs. The wife has to go back and get a job this time, or the husband that stayed home, or the teenage kid because the mom and dad can't afford their cell phone or their car payment anymore. And the kid's going to have to. People are going back because, to your point, credit card debt, $1 trillion. Second thing was another headline I shared, either Wall Street Journal or something. The delinquency on car payments. Okay, it went up, the highest that it's been, and it's high. It's higher now than February of 2009. Yeah, I'll remember what February 2009 was.
Yes, sir.
Right? It was a kick of the recession. There's more late paid car payments right now than the kickoff of the recession. Started in 2008, but we really got kicked in the head in 2009. And so you throw in that credit card debt, you throw in the fact that customers are behind on these car payments. I'm hearing dealers talk about customers, what they're doing right now is they can't trade out of this car that they're paid $700-800 a month. They're used to paying $500. Now they bumped it up to $700. They can't afford to trade out of it. So what they're doing is buying another car
and then walking away from the
and then dropping that one, because it'll screw up their credit. By the time they need another car, their credit will be cleaned up by then.
Correct. Absolutely.
So
good.
Wait a minute. I we're not advising that. We're just saying that's what some people are
not giving financial advice on this particular car. Yeah.
No, but what you just said is, it's not a little thing. It's a phenomenon right now. I'm hearing that from a number of dealers. As a matter of fact, one who's going to be at Business Bourbon and Cigars, Scott, I'm not going to name him here, but he's had that happen a number of times at his store over the last couple of months, because people just did what they had to do during COVID. And there was the, I'll call them the Biden bucks flying all over the place. And so people did what they had to do and figured out they could cash flow it for a period of time. And now they've figured out the next, life hack as it relates to the car. It's funny, Jason, when you referenced the credit card issue and people going back to work, Scott recently pulled his 12-year-old or 13-year-old, 12-year-old Sophia out of school and forced her into a YouTube channel to try and drive some more revenue to the household.
Correct.
Because his credit card bills are getting out of control.
Yeah. Her subscribers, she outnumbers me. So she did it in 6 months. That's what's incredible.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
So Jason, let me ask you, what inspired you to really develop this, to start LotPop and develop this unique approach when it comes to used car inventory management?
Well, I'll give you a snippet of my career. So I started selling in 97. And within 6 months, we started this internet thing. So I was selling cars off the internet in 1998. And for 8 years on the retail, and I either cut my teeth, I either sold internet leads or I ran internet departments. Then I ran into Dale Pollock in 05. He had a tool called Empower Auto. Dale Pollock created what you now know as vAuto. But when I joined him, it was Empower Auto. And he knew, used car and internet go hand in hand. It's process driven. And so for 8+ years, stepping into thousands of dealerships with used car managers, the reason why I stepped away, one was on a personal reason. I traveled so much and I had a young family. I just wanted to get off the road and be a better leader at church and home and so forth. But the other thing is that I'll go into dealerships all the time, and that manager is getting pulled in 20 different directions. Let's talk used car manager. They're coming in, they got a heat deal in service from a customer who bought a car a week ago. They got a salesman calling in sick. They got an appraisal waiting for him. The auction's calling him about a car that he's trying to put at the lane or whatever. And in the meantime, he's trying to work the first deal of the day. And then I'm a vAuto rep going, hey, you need to worry about your photos and your descriptions and your pricing and this metric and that metric. And they're like, yeah, I know, but I just don't have time. And they're too small to get a used car director and then to hire an assistant. How do you hire or fire? So I said, you know what? I know what it takes to be a good operator. I know what you should be paying attention to. Why don't I do that for the used car manager? And then we'll meet every week. Because I didn't want to be a consultant and just go out because a consultant, I'm going to have to find a new gig all the time. I'd have to be on the road. So I said, how about every week we'll meet, I'll track all the data and do the stuff you should be doing, but don't have time to or don't know how. And then we'll meet up every week and go over what's working, what's not working. So 9 years later, here we are. 7 years of just Google Sheets and everything else. We converted to this a software tool. But going back to my internet years, we combine the lead inventory management with lead data now, and doesn't matter your inventory, vAuto, VenQ, Max Digital, and CRM, eLeads, Drive Centric, whatever. We combine these two to, again, it's called Lot Walk, because they do a physical lot walk every day. They make sure the customers are and cars are standing tall in their lot, but the virtual lot is two separate silos. So it's real important for me to realize after 25 years of doing this, how come these two worlds haven't been combined? We've had a digital virtual lot for 25 years, meaning our website and our leads and our customers, but yet we couldn't manage them together like we do on our physical lot. So it's just kind of been 9 years of just massaging all of this. But again, the biggest purpose was just to help these guys that needed more help, or gals that needed more help, but just didn't have the manpower or the time to do it all. Just streamlined it. And we just point out the problem. Again, going back to work the facts, if you're heavy in pickup trucks, let's isolate pickup trucks, figure out what trucks are not working on your lot, figure out if you have leads on those trucks, and then call and email, work those leads, and maybe do a price adjustment. But don't do the pricing yet. Let's figure out our problems first. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to do that. Actually, that's a good, nice little segue. We're going to dive into what we discussed earlier with the mastermind group sessions that we do. I almost want to pretend, and this is one of our topics. So it'd be great if for the people that are unable to attend Business Bourbon and Cigars to kind of get a little glimpse. The only thing missing is you're the only mastermind at this table. So you're, so, the good news is all the ideas are going to be great because they're all yours. So
sure, there we go.
All right, but we'll start off, if the goal is to, if we have a mastermind goal, right, and that is to increase or maximize, optimize used car sales and profits. Mm-hmm. Before we can do that, just to your point, we have to first identify what obstacles, what challenges, what barriers are keeping us currently from being able to do that. So I'm asking you today, what are the 3 biggest challenges, obstacles, or barriers that are keeping dealers from increasing used car sales and profits?
One, I would say lead management part of it. More times than not, when we're finding an inventory problem, it's not due to pricing and stuff. We have leads, but the lead hasn't been followed up with. The leads on there. The other opportunities is taking advantage of the current leads or database you have. And one of the things that blew my mind, anywhere from 60 to 80% of their current active leads that they're calling and emailing and working are on cars that sold. Okay. So a customer submits a lead on an F-150, it sells 2 weeks later, and we're still emailing about, hey, you still interested in this F-150? Well, let's take that customer like we would on the showroom floor and take them and try to switch them to the Silverado. It's similar, same price point, less miles. Okay. We would do that on the showroom floor, but we're not maximizing that. So again, doing those 2 things help you reduce the price reduction, helps you stop dropping prices to get more leads. Hey, sales have stopped. Let's drop prices and see if we can get more, activity going. You have a lot of, more times than not, that dealership has a lot. It's just, again, that it's this CRMs don't talk cars, and those things doesn't stick out. The other thing is, again, I think a lot of dealers, they've experienced through COVID, the 2 strategies that we try to teach dealers. One, the best time to make the most money on a car is when it's fresh. We all agree. Everybody would say, yeah, that's okay. Well, then do we want to increase or decrease the odds of selling while it's fresh? Or we want to increase it? Okay, by pricing it above market because it's a fresh car because you want to give it a shot. Are you increasing or decreasing? So one, we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to increase the amount of cars we sell fresh. And dealers seen that through COVID. Cars were flying off the shelves. And then the other thing is carry what you sell what you carry. You don't have to have 150 in stock to sell the 100. And again, they learned that through COVID. Right. They were selling 120 with 80 in stock, and they couldn't keep it going. So those 2 strategies, they actually learned through COVID. We try to teach that well before COVID, but only the discipline. And so you're going to have to going forward. And one of the 2 things they should have learned from COVID is, man, I don't have to have 100 or 150 to sell 100. And then if they could focus on that first 30 sale rate and increase that, the rest should fall into place. So
when demand drops, and so when demand does drop, my question to you, because the rule of thumb that you just quoted there, I need 150 to sell 100, and you're saying it doesn't need to be, and I agree with you. Do you see that going back to that as demand drops and people just saying, well, I just need more used cars to sell more? Or do you see them do you actually see these guys taking what they've learned and continuing that?
I like to say,
I know you got to be friendly on here.
Well, no, I mean, a lot of we, and I say we, because, we're actively on calls every week with our dealerships. We're actually changing prices. We have some dealers that have us handle their prices. Some, hey, I'm on vacation this week, just go ahead and do it. So I say we as part of, we tend to have a short memory. Okay. And we want to hold on to our wins. Okay. And so what's funny is dealers tend not to react, or managers, whoever, don't tend to react to a problem till there's pain involved. Okay. And it's just like anybody else. I don't go to the doctors, and I should, but I'll wait until it feels funny. And then all of a sudden I can't move it anymore. Then I'll finally go in. Right. So, I think, tax season is going to soften up by second week of April, and it'll be obvious by the end of April. It won't be painful till May and the end of May, and they'll react then. And they should have been reacting to it, March 20th, knowing, okay, the next week or two is going to slow down. Let's shift.
Yeah.
So, we're so month to month, and that's the other bad thing. So it's hard to learn from our previous mistakes from 2 years ago, because I'm just focusing what I got to do this month. But if they step back and looked at it, one of the things to kind of piggyback off that, one of my fears was, man, I just feel a fear for that salesperson that just got into business the last 2 to 3 years, or that used car manager that just started taking that role in the last 2 to 3 years, because they're going to get hit with reality if we go back into kind of recession type scenario. Yeah. But then I step back and go, well, no, really, you only know how to handle that recession type scenario if you've been around for at least 15 years, going back to 08, 09. So, and I just, there's been too many. The person that's been around long enough, I think, can understand that. The person that hasn't is going to have a hard time. And there's so much turnover in the car business that I think people, they're just going to struggle.
Yeah.
You talked about two things I think that are critical to understand. You talked about discipline and responsiveness, right? And so, there's the old adage, like the ones that are busy making the most money in used cars are doing it because most everybody else is trying to make all the money.
Yeah.
Right. And so they understand the difference, right? And the discipline to fight that urge to try and take all the money, if you will, versus how do I maximize and optimize the most inventory they can as quickly as possible and keep that turn velocity, super high, versus, I'm going to sit there and try and make all the money on my inventory. The other piece is you talk about the reactive nature, and we wait too long, 60 days, 90 days down the road, when we should have been responding at the moment we started to see it turning, or have the foresight to understand that, something different is coming around the corner. If we don't know at this point that what goes up must come down, we got to go back to the days when, we were sitting across from the teacher with crisscross applesauce, waiting for story time. I mean, like, if it goes up, it comes down. It's just the natural respiration of a marketplace. And you give great, sound, practical advice in terms of look at it now. Don't wait till it's a pain point, because by then all the pain is compounded over that period of time. It only gets worse and harder to correct.
To your first point, one of the quotes I always say is the manager that tries to control gross by managing gross ends up costing themselves gross. And what I mean by that is a lot of times they try to manage the gross going, I'll give it another week or two, or I'll get somebody on it. And they're trying to control the situation, and they can't. And sometimes they do. And that's what they remember. Back to your point, Scott, is like, I remember when we made $4,000 on that 90-day-old car, well, that's okay. So they remember that, but they don't remember the $20,000 they lost on the 20 cars that they had to wholesale, because that didn't get whacked to the pay plan. So the managers that try to control gross by managing gross ends up costing them gross in the long run, and that's just, you got to just, again, find that problem, isolate the problem, figure out what's causing that problem, fix the problem. And it's not that hard, but it is.
All right. So out of those three top challenges, right? Barriers, issues, whatever we want to call them, obstacles. If a dealer could solve only one of the three, which one, and they were able to overcome it, which one would have the biggest impact on increasing their used car sales and profit today?
I would say
they could solve it right now.
We pass these out. First 30. If they can focus on the first 30 strategy, that would be the one I'd solve, because the rest will fall in place. And what I mean by first 30, try to get 60 to 70% of your sales in the first 30 days. If you can do that, that leaves very few cars to bleed through to the 30 to 45 bucket, to the 40 to 60. That's not much cars left over to bleed through. So if you can focus on the first 30, what sells in the first 30 days, the volume kicks in too, because all of a sudden, man, all my cars are gone. I need more cars. But it's a trickle down effect.
Department, Jason, right? I mean, that's feeding parts and service and also new car finance as well. So
Yeah. And so, yeah, it touches every department. That means that my transportation has to be sharp, my service, my parts, my detail, my photos. If I'm getting leads on cars, I got to get those communicated and get them going fast. And so it impacts every department if you just do that. To shoot for 60. And if anything, in your inventory tools, you should be able to I would pull the last 2 weeks of your sales and see what percentage of those sales are going out in the first 30 days. Try to get it to 60 to 70% and do that every week. Pull that number, pull it every week, and then see where you're at. Pull it and then figure out what's causing that problem. You know, what's stopping me from doing this.
It's a great strategy.
All right. So let's talk about how we'd measure success. So let's say you got a client and you're meeting them. They come on board with you. What are the key metrics that you in order to be successful, to be able to say this dealer is moving in the right direction or is succeeding at a high level? What are the top metrics that you look at that without this is what's most important in saying we're successful at what we're doing here?
The two metrics the first focus point of the first 30, what percentage are there? And then the other is the volume and what I call true turn. Okay. So some inventory tools will give you a turn of your inventory based on the average age of your current inventory.
Yep.
I could just have a good aging policy. I did that. I'd be like, hey, your turn's at 12. You got 100 cars. You're on pace to sell 100. And they go, no, we're selling 70. All they have is a good aging policy. They just keep cars not going past 60. They move them on. And their average age of inventory is 30 days. So it's 12 turn, even though they're not turning 12. So what I mean by true turn would be take a look at what you sold. I like 2-week windows here because I don't want to go 30 or 45 days back for a supply.
Yep.
So take the last 2 weeks and let's say you sold 50 units and then times it by 2. That's 4 weeks or a month. So you've sold 50 in the last 2 weeks. That puts you on pace to sell 100 and you have 150 in stock. So, and only 40% are going out the first 30. Okay. Well, let's increase the amount of cars going out the first 30. In order to do that, I probably have to have 60 to 70% of my inventory in the first 30 to sell 60 to 70. So I got to clean up some age, recycle it, put in fresh cars. Don't try to hold out on these fresh cars. Well, I'll mark these up because I'm taking a beating down here and try to offset it because then they're just going to. So those two metrics, get that fresh sale rate up and then figure out what are your volume part and look at the last 2 weeks times 2. So if you have 100 in stock, you sold 50 in the last 2 weeks, that puts you on pace for 100. That's a true 12 turn. And if it drops off over the next week, you peek at it and you're down to 35, that's only 70 with 100 in stock. Okay, what happened? And then that's, again, where you got to figure out what that is. But those two steps, volume times, last 2 weeks times 2 and the first 30.
Going back to the first 30, in our last mastermind, the leadership retreat we did, it was all about, the first mastermind topic breakout session was on acquiring used cars, which is still critical. But I think that shifted to your point, which is acquiring the right used cars. And when I hear your first 30 and trying to sell 60 to 70% of the cars within the first 30 days, that's also telling you could probably look at those insights in that data and say, well, this is the majority of what's selling. So when we're acquiring more cars, we need to acquire those. It seems like it would be easier to sell 60 to 70% of our cars in the 30 if we kept acquiring more of the vehicles that people were buying in that time period, right?
Yeah. But here's the thing. Not that I don't like talking about acquisition. There's no well that I can point you to, okay? So the thing is, most dealers want to avoid going to the auction. The only benefit about going to the auction, you get to pick and choose what you get to buy. So if I'm a high volume or decent volume new car franchise and I want 80% of my inventory, used car inventory, to be trade-ins, well, guess what? You don't get to control your trade-ins. You're going to have a purple PT Cruiser show up on your lot on your oldest age unit, and you're going to buy a trade for a purple PT Cruiser because you want to get out of this oldest unit. Now what? And so I think a good process can move a bad car. Okay, so you're going to get stuck. You can't control a lot of shit. Even if you go to the lane and you got 200 cars that you've made up all the bids that you want to buy, and I'm going to bid on these 200 cars, and here's what I'm going to bid. I bet you 80, 90% of those cars you don't end up buying. Shoot, 100% you don't end up buying. So then what? You need 20 cars, you end up calling Enterprise, or used to, and say, hey, you got 20 Malibus, I need some cars. You overpay for those, and now you got a bunch of rental rockets. But if you have a good process, a good process can move a bad car. Bad car meaning, not a rusted out flood car. I'm talking about, I bought it wrong. I paid too much.
Wrong car.
It's got the
wrong
wrong
car,
miles.
wrong cost.
Now, good process could be good pricing process, could be lead management process, and paying attention to it at day 2. Because think about it, the cars you're buying today are going to be aged and when the tax season's over. So if you don't move them in the next, so pay attention to day 2, 10, day 8, day 10, day 16, and have a good process in place, and you'll move that bad car. So acquisition's tricky. There's no, even now private party acquisition, that's good. But now a lot of people are dipping in that game. It's getting to be more competitive. And a lot of people are in a bad situation. The last 2 years, it was easy to private party acquisition. Oh, you want 10 grand for your car, mister? I'll give you 12. When can you be here? Right. And that was easy to do. Now you're calling them up and go, you want 15? The thing's worth 10. Good luck, but I'll give you 11 maybe, and so that's going to be a different conversation for dealers to have. And that's,
well, I think, hold on here. I think people have been talking about this for years, so this is not a new thing, but service to sales in terms of working your service lane, the benefit that you have that say these new businesses that are competing against private selling is, a lot of times the financial data on these clients. So if they're a client that you sold, you have the ability to go in and say, can you improve their situation? Did they buy it within the last 2 years to where maybe they're going to struggle getting out of it without some type of strong incentive? So does that become more important of an acquisition strategy, even more than it used to be?
Well, you mean the customer's financial situation on that car?
Well, out of the service drive. In other words, working that even harder and paying more attention to that, because there you can pick and choose if you wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to want to work your service drive, private party acquisitions be the 2 focus areas, and then go to the, obviously trades first. Make sure your trade process is tight. Make sure your service acquisition's good, private party acquisitions, and then fill the holes with some wholesale or renter callers if they come back around. But yeah, I think the financial situation of customers, especially if they bought in the last 2 to 4 years, is going to be the biggest struggle. And that's where you end up having to probably put a lot of people on a new car, but hopefully now you get the trade. And again, the new cars are probably, with inflation, offer some special interest rates to make it more appealing. I mean, again, we're buying a used cars and we're in the 5s and 6s, which we would probably been in the 2s or 3s or 4s, and so
correct.
If they offered a 2.9, on a new one and a $3,000 rebate, I think was it just the Chevy store I just had here? I thought they had rebate and incentive right now, like a, 1,500 and 2.9 or something, or maybe a 3.
We talked earlier about not repeating some of the things. And what did we hear during COVID from every OEM? We're not going back to these
incentives again.
We don't even have full inventory yet if we're already there.
I mean, you got to step back and think about it. They've got these huge facilities. They got the huge staff. Correct. They have to put these people to work and use these facilities. So that means they got to build cars. Now, they might be able to control a little bit better with fleet and maybe, fluctuate and put more in the fleet. But then again, that affects the used cars. But they're going to be putting these cars on these dealers' lots. Even if they're not flooding them with it, if the market's not there because we're in a recession and people can't afford to buy cars, these cars are still common. It was just like the recession. We only sold 10 million new cars back then, 10 or 11. And so, they still got cars put on their lot because they didn't want to have to, lay off. But eventually those cars came back into the market. But I think they're going to keep these cars coming. They want to at least get back to some of these levels. And think about it, the Ford or the GM and Toyota battle. Toyota was number one, now GM, and then they went back. The GM's in the United States, but Toyota, the world, and you got Volkswagen dipping in it. So they're going to want that crown. And then Ford, and the only way they can do that is with some volume.
Yeah.
The bad thing is, and that's the other thing why incentives are going to have to come. A lot of these cars are bad cars, meaning they don't have heated seats. They got everything but heated seats, or they got everything but a roof, or they got everything.
They don't have the right
active steering because they. Yeah. And so it's like, all right, well, sorry, it's $100,000 Denali, but without adaptive steering and heated seats, but we'll give you a $4,000 rebate to make. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna.
You just hit the nail on that, right? Like that's exactly it. It's going to be, here's the influence of the incentive on the purchase decision for the end user, and it's going to impact dealer behavior as well, because the dealer is looking at it as a tool to retail a vehicle. Whether or not it's going to be exactly what the prospect is looking for is immaterial. It's a matter of does the math work at the end of the day.
And with a shortage and people wanting that car, they were willing just to go ahead and buy it without it. But
Sure.
if there's 15 to choose from now, and one has the roof and nav, they're going to pick that unless the other one's discounted significantly.
We could apply the exact same strategy you were talking about before with respect to your ability to respond and see around the corner, if you will, with respect to used vehicle markets on the OEM side. I mean, like, for God's sakes, how many times do we have to see this show with the OEMs over and over and over again? It's, it's just amazing to me how what's old is new again, and never is an awful damn long time, fellas. And so when I hear, over the last years, we're never going back to incentives, I used to laugh. I say, what are you guys talking about? You think this is going to go on forever? Come on.
There's a 0% chance they're not going to try to outcompete and outsell and gain market share.
Think about when
let me ask you,
the old dealer groups of the days gone by, guys. You remember, like, if dealers all get together and say, okay, we're going to hold the line on the ad car, and the first guy to get out of the room was on the phone with his GM saying, all right, listen, here's the deal. We're going to put our ad out. It's going to be a nickel less than everybody else. It's like, wait a minute,
Sandy, I don't know. That's called price fixing, and I have
I'm talking about the 70s.
Been a part.
Talking about the 70s. In the 70s, we called it price adjusting.
Yeah. April Simmons has got a question. So also, now that we have new cars to sell, we have trades to take in. How is online presence for trade, meaning the offer the customer sees before they talk to you? I guess she's asking how important are
like instant cash offers and all those.
Right.
To me, you're gonna have to have, and this is where most dealers struggle, because these aren't high closing percentage leads or activity. A lot of people just put out, like my wife put out a feeler of what her Volvos were for trading, but you can't trade it in. It's going to have to go back to Volvo. Evidently, we can't trade it in. So you're going to have a strong follow-up process.
Right.
You're going to have to, because these people are probably going to get knocked backwards on the value and be like, oh crap, I thought it was worth more than that. And you're going to have to be able to overcome those objections. Like I said, used to be, because dealers would create these vehicle buying centers, a VBC, and they'd have VB reps, and those could be hourly people that limited car experience or sell experience. They're just calling and emailing all these people to try to get somebody hooked, and then they were able to offer them that or more for their trade-ins. If the values drop, that conversation has to be a whole other you're talking some good sales skills here to say, hey, I know you owe 15 and you want 15, but it's only worth this, and if you really need to get out of it, what's your payment? It's going to have to be some finagling to get these people out, and that makes it even a lower close. But I think it's important because customers are going to want it. And here's the thing, like I said, when my wife's shopping around, and if you guys have Six Flags, it's like she has a season pass. She's just test driving everything. I'm like, you're going to tick these people off. You're just like going for all the rides, aren't you? And so she's like, yeah, this sales rep's getting aggravated with me. I said, well, I guess so, but she should help you. And that's my point. The person that helps her buy this car, because she's all over the place, but the person that does help her buy this car is going to earn our business long term. Goes back to the trade-in thing. If somebody submits a lead, they're inquiring about something. Even if you can't get them now, but you help them over time and follow up with a good process, can move a bad car. Maybe 6 months or 8 months from now, they're in a better equity situation on the car. Absolutely. They have some money down. That's when you get the deals, but that's a lot of work. And right now,
I wish
we're so instant satisfaction with dealerships and management and team that they don't want to go through all that pain and headache.
That's playing a short game. And I tell you, Scott, it gets you in trouble.
It's any industry. So I think really good salespeople, really good executives understand what you were just talking about there in terms of working for the sale, providing that superior experience, support, going above and beyond. When we just take this business bourbon and cigars thing and we have to do site visits. So, we get the tours, they go all out and letting you stay. And of course, those site visits, right? Those are the ones where they're putting on their best face. But ultimately, if all things are equal or close in terms of the locations, what it always comes down to, and my wife, Trish, she handles the logistical planning for these events. It comes down to the sales rep and which one, especially on the follow-up, goes above and beyond and makes her job easier, because and there's nothing worse I will tell you this. We've been to different cities and like literally where we might go see 6 or 7 spots, Jason, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? This sales rep was head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of like really making our stay nice, but the follow-up in the follow-up prior to our visit and after. But the challenge of where you get torn is maybe there's 2 of those and you have 2 good reps and 2 good locations. And then it makes you sick to your stomach to have to turn one down because you've built that relationship with them. And that to me, that's any industry.
Well, even worse is like, again, I the place that she's going is and now we're just looking for a used SUV, 35 to 50 grand. But I mean, where she's going is this Porsche, Maserati, Land Rover dealership. So it's they got Ferraris and everything. So it's a high-end store. And the girl's getting frustrated with her. And my wife sees that. The problem is I almost feel guilty, almost like I have to buy a car from her because my wife's putting her through so many hoops. But the thing is, if somebody actually, if they don't end up having it, we won't just settle just to get her a commission. But it makes me feel bad because of that. And my wife almost said, I just need another salesperson. But all it takes is one of these other stores, which we've been to Audi store, we've been to the Volvo store, we've been to a used car lot. It just takes one of those people to just help her. Hey, I got this in when it could do this. Hey, would you want to come in and test drive this? What if I brought it to your house? Somebody's going above and beyond. Even if we didn't buy from them, I guarantee you my wife would be like, because like I said, we're buying 3 cars in the next 6 months. My sister-in-law just bought a car. My wife would be like, hey, you need to go see Tommy. He took care of me. I didn't buy it, but they didn't have it. You got to go see Tammy or Tommy at so-and-so. You know what I'm saying? She would just eat it up. She would love it. And she would refer everybody to it, even if she'd feel bad for not buying it from them. But yeah, to your point,
you're raising a great point, Jason. Like a true selling professional is going to know that information because they've done a good job during the relationship building process. Right. So it's amazing we're talking about this because last night I'm sitting there and I developed an acronym, SALES, but it's SAALES, sales as a leadership education service, right? And so it was Ryan who just came up here with a comment, Ryan Van, who said, follow up, follow up, follow up. And we talk about, start connected, stay connected. And where you're going is know that information, right? You're going through a leadership and education exercise with your prospects and your clients every single day. Know that you have 2 or 3 opportunities. Own that driveway, right? Own that household opportunity with respect to multiple vehicles. A couple of years back, we bought 5 cars in less than a year in my household, and it was like bonkers. But if anybody had paid attention, they'd have known that, and they would have had 5 car deals, right? Yeah. But the sad reality is that we're not taking enough time to educate folks, and I think that's going to be even more important. To your point before about how do we deal with these massive drops in vehicle valuations, especially folks that purchased a vehicle over the last 2 or 3 years. And it's not going to be a $14 an hour, quote unquote salesperson. It's going to be somebody that's got some seasoning, some smarts, and knows how to lead and educate the prospect through that process.
Let's go back to the switch opportunities that we talked about. 60, 70, 80% of these leads are on cars that sold. And on the showroom floor, we would not walk away from that. Hey, that car sold. Walk away. We try to switch them, but we don't do that in our CRM. It's just not a way to do it. But here's the thing. Like I said, my wife submitted a lead on a X6. Well, she's also looking at X4. She's looking at Mercedes. She's looking at a Porsche. She's looking at a Volvo. She's looking at Audi. She's looking at. So if she submits a lead on a car and it sells, they give up on her. And be like, well, no. If you got a black and tan Cayenne, she'll be there tomorrow to drive the dang thing.
Why do you think that is?
Again, going back to that's a lot of skills to switch from
bad habits,
and it's bad
habits, poor skill development, and bad habits. Right?
Did I tell you about the football experience I had? No. So
it didn't involve a monkey, did it?
Just right. Let me see. Right here. Where am I at? Right here. Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Okay, I'm in Kansas City. We're in the Super Bowl. Last Saturday.
First off, this show's over.
All right.
I'm a Bengal fan.
So at least you're not a Philly fan, right? So here's the thing.
Oh yeah, we got to see them flapping their arms all over the place. Yep.
So get this. You'll appreciate this, Sandy, based on what you're just talking about too. Last 2 Saturdays ago, when we're in the playoff game started at 3:30. We're actually having people over at the house. We had to pick up food by 3. All morning long, we're sitting on the couch. My wife's on the chair in the living room. I'm texting her, hey, look at this car. Hey, look at this car. Hey, look at this car. Look at this car. It got to be about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we go, hey, do you want to go drive that? It was a Porsche Cayenne at an Audi store that was only 20 minutes from our house.
This. Yeah, you posted about this.
So so I look at my wife. I said, you want to go drive? She said, you think we have enough time? I said, I can get out of here in 10, 15 minutes. We'll be there by 1:30, drive it till 2:30. We got to pick up the food by 3. Fine. And so we called the store, and my wife goes, well, hey, why don't you call before we drive all the way out there, make sure the car's still there? I said, fine. So I called the store, and of course, ring, get the operator, put it on hold, get transferred again. I think it was the sales manager. Matter of fact, he had my caller ID because he goes, you calling from St. Louis? Even though I live in Kansas City, my cell's a St. Louis number. I said, no, I'm in Olathe. He goes, oh, cool. You're real close by. I'm calling that Porsche Cayenne. Is it in stock? Yeah, it is. Let me get you somebody. So then he passes me on to a salesperson. I get the salesperson online. And I said, hey, yeah, we're interested in coming to test drive that. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's here in stock. He goes, but we might be closing early. I said, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, the big game. I said, yeah, I know. He goes, yeah, so maybe around 3 o'clock. And I kind of laughed. I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah, but if Monday could work, we can maybe, if that'll work better for you. And I kind of laughed. I said, really? I kind of laughed. I said, really? I had it on speakerphone. So my wife heard this whole thing. And I said, oh, okay. All right. Well, thanks. Bye. And I just looked at my wife. I said, did that just happen? Did that just happen? So yeah, I shared it online, and there's a mix of emotions. Some got good for the dealer and worry about employees and everything. But I'm like, my goodness, are you
3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon? Were we kidding?
They're used to COVID where people just come. You just have to come in when I tell you to come in. You'll be lucky if you see her when I get here. But if anything, I said, to be fair, if I would have said, I'm in a hurry too, we got people coming over, we want to be at about 3 anyways, it probably would have been a conversation. But I shouldn't have to pull that out of me. He should at least ask for my name and or said, hey, you're in Olathe. How about if this doesn't work, I'll bring it to you on Monday. Would that work for you?
Absolutely.
Something. But guess what? We haven't gone back by that dealership to go buy that car. And we haven't even tested it. We've been to 6 other dealerships and test drive 6 other cars.
I want you offline to send me the contact info for that dealership. I'll reach out to them. We'll teach them a thing or two.
Well, it's funny. It's part of a dealer group, and a GM at their other store hit me up in the back channel and said, hey, I bet you're talking about my store, They should have done that. We're closing at 3-2, but I'm not telling my people the last minute, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, my gosh, are you kidding?
But
are you
that spoiled? At 3. You said it. Be creative. Be creative and figure out a solution that makes sense, that's palatable for the prospect, right? How about take a deposit ahead of time? Say, listen, let's put a deposit on the vehicle. We'll refund it to you, but let's get you set up so at least we can hold the vehicle for you. If I want to do something, like something to bind you to the opportunity.
I said they have my phone number. If anything, I would have thought maybe Monday they called me and said, hey, did you call on Saturday? Would you like to come in and look at it? They know I'm 20 minutes from them. I said I'm in Olathe. Yeah. And my wife wants me to leave work all the time to go test drive these cars. I'm like, babe, I got to work. And so if these guys would just bring it to my office here, which is only 10 minutes from my house, my wife literally can meet me here.
That's what I was
drive it together.
Yeah.
Oh, and we can get you appraisal on your car while we're there.
Absolutely.
They would earn my business, right? And I'll just wait. Exactly, hey, just wait for Tommy. He's looking for a car for us, babe. Yeah, but I seen this one. I know, but get with Tommy. See if you find. You know what I'm saying? We would try to buy a car from them.
Need to get them invested.
And like I said, 3 cars. I just co-signed for my son 2 weeks ago. My wife's lease is up. My 15-year-old's turning 16 in July.
Own the driveway. Own the damn driveway. Just be a little bit curious about your prospects, right?
But back to your point, it's a little long story, but I think they got spoiled over the years with COVID. The cars are flying off the shelves. They can ask whatever they wanted. They even reduced their hours from 8 o'clock down to 6. And like, you come in when we're, so yeah, it was just amazing. I'm like, wow, you guys must have a record month going on and not worry about any sales. Because
back in 95, 96, we were taking purchase orders on used vehicles that we didn't have in stock. We would just develop what we called a vehicle profile, and we would try and get as close as we could to the vehicle profile with a refundable deposit back to the prospect at that point in time, and we would go and try and back into a car deal. All right, and we weren't always successful, but we were successful more than we weren't, and we took people out of the marketplace because then they knew at that point, well, I've got a commitment, they're looking, and we had 72 hours to find them a vehicle. very often we'd use the first 72, show them 1 or 2 vehicles that didn't make sense, and earn another 72. You follow me? But you got to be creative if you want to win in a market like we're about to enter into.
Oh yeah, and I don't think anybody's going to be reaching out on a car or a lead or show up to test drive unless they're serious about doing it.
If they're real, 100%.
With high interest rates, inflation, eggs costing $12, whatever. Now they're going, but it's tight for people right now. And yeah, they might have bad credit. The bad credit people they don't care about the economy. But I mean, either way, it doesn't matter.
People have great credit.
My best customers were the bad credit customers because I got them done and they owed me for it, and they send their friends to me. Absolutely. And I treated them like a good paying customer. I didn't treat them like a bad paying customer.
Amen.
All right. Final question. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. What role do you think investing in brand building and relationship building play in maximizing used car sales and profits?
Great question. Wow.
What role does what play?
Brand building and relationship building. I'll give you an example. Obviously during COVID, when acquisition was a priority, dealers weren't branded themselves prior to COVID as being a buying center. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, they all started doing it during COVID when they were desperately, just to your point, right? Once desperation hit, all right, we better start doing that. Well, branding isn't built overnight. So how important is that?
I think, obviously that's a big part. And that's the borderline of, I think, like videos and video walkarounds and offering that stuff social media wise and getting out in front of these, hey, fresh trade folks excited about this car, come take a look at it, throw a video out. And that's why I say it's a fine line. Some of these dealers will or will not let their salespeople handle that stuff themselves, or if they got to do it through a channel and make it hard or whatever. But also like reviews, it's huge, make sure, because that's another thing my wife's looking at. Hey, this dealer only has a 4-star and this guy has a 5-star, and which one?
Third-party validation. Yeah,
third-party validation. So I think branding and putting that inventory and people out there are really, really big. To your point about acquiring cars and marketing that, and I think that rolls into just back we were talking about the service drive and letting the customer know that they could sell their car if they're interested, why they're at the dealership. They don't know that. Matter of fact, I'm ashamed to say this. I hope you didn't hear. My oldest son, who actually works in my office here, he bought a car from a Ford store or used one. He didn't realize he could take his car to a Ford store to get an oil change. Wow. He thought they only did. I'm like, he thought he had to go to like a Jiffy Lube or do that. Go to Google and type in oil change and see what you get. It's not a dealer. Right.
So I should tell you,
that's all he knew.
I have to do a cheap plug for our sponsor, J&L Marketing. There is a way to market that in such a generic, when someone does a generic search you can, well, church is always on my mind, Sandy. I know that's a foreign word to you, but
well, Scott, the closer you get to the casket, the more it stays on your mind.
That's right. So, in terms of search, that allow dealers to compete with the Jiffy Lubes. And that's what it talks about from an innovative strategy to where you're regardless of the hundreds of thousands of dollars a national brand like that might be spending and can afford to spend on generic stuff. Dealers can compete with that, but they got to have the right strategies in place. But get to your point. Let me go ahead and finish that.
Well, my point, I mean, that's the thing. That's his world. He's 31. And I'd hate to see what my 24-year-old son's world's like, but he grew up Googling stuff and whatever popped up, that's reality. Right. And no dealerships popped up. I didn't know I could take my car to Ford store. I'm like, you got to warrant, you get to take, because the only reason why he knew that was part of the, when he bought it was part of the package of free oil change for like a year. And he's like, I didn't know I could take it. It's cool because it's on my way home. I'm like, how's that not happen? So
you know what?
That's a great point. And Scott, by the way, I want to give you third-party validation because some of my clients have used the exact J&L strategy and campaigns that you guys build out. It works. Okay. And there is a way to make sure you're capturing that market. And when you've got margins that, parts and service wise represent floating head. That's funny.
Yeah, the black.
I'm an ethereal being. That's why I'm an ethereal being. But when you are maximizing opportunity in the part of your business where you're producing 60 to 65% gross on parts and labor, man, it's an easy investment to make, and the return is immediate.
Well, let's wrap this or talk about used car and acquisition again. How many can I get in my service drive to do oil changes to offer to buy their cars?
That's
right?
exactly.
You know, drive that low funnel business.
Correct.
Even if it costs you money. What if, even if you gave away for, I thought about that. Even if it costs you $50 for an oil change, how much does it cost you to get a person into your dealership in the first place? So if you had to eat the $50, but you could either upsell them on wipers and brakes and or try to buy their car, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, first off, that goes back to data, Jason. I mean, if you're a service manager, fixed ops director, and you sit there and say, you know what, I've tested this. Every time I give away an oil change, yeah, it costs me this, but this is the percentage I retain after that moving forward. And I hope, and the lifetime value after that is this, and it brings in an annual revenue number of this and profit of this, whatever it might be. Then it's easier to make that call. But if you don't have that data and you're not looking at it, then
the data is fine, but it also comes back to process. So let's add to that. A good process can sell a bad car, and a good process can buy a good car, you know, because you can work your service lane and buy the good cars coming out.
Well, what are people going to be looking for, fellas? I mean, you know, if you listen to dealer social media and went onto their website and looked at their ads during COVID, every dealer was screaming, "We'll pay you top dollar for your trade." That wasn't what was important to people. What they were looking for is who can find me my next vehicle, right? So the messaging was completely inverted in terms of what was important to the person receiving the message. They were speaking for what was important to the person that was delivering the message.
Oh, yeah.
Got to take that to heart as we see the market shift now. What's it going to be? Let us help you get you out of a vehicle that maybe you're, you know, buried in at this point in time. And the messaging speaks to that, and that'll drive opportunities to buy vehicles the right way.
Correct.
You know?
Sure.
All right. Well, in closing today's episode, first off, I want to thank our guest, Jasen Rice, for joining us and sharing his expertise on how to maximize used car sales and profit. Thank you. As a special shout out to our co-host today, Sandy Cerami, who brought his unique perspective and insights to the conversation. His floating head, his phenomenal hair, all appreciated.
Did him and Steve get in a fight on who had the best hair when you guys had?
I cannot win that battle, Jason.
Oh, no.
I surrender to Steve Rossler. The man's lid is off the charts.
You're close.
Maybe
about half his height, but
20 years ago
in the place. Yeah.
20 years ago, Sandy could have competed a little bit better on that. Not today. Not today. All right. So, yeah, I also, to the MCC audience out there, I hope you found today's episode informative, more importantly, actionable. And when I talk about actionable, I'm talking about, I'm hoping this show inspired you to take some of this mastermind approach. Some of the questions we asked, what are those 3 biggest obstacles and barriers? Jason did a great job identifying those.
Yeah.
But then he broke it down and said, all right, if we could only solve one, right? What would have the biggest impact on moving us towards achieving our goal or exceeding our goal? And then walking through that process and how we solve that issue. So to me, the techniques we discussed today can be applied in any business, any industry, and help you solve your toughest challenges, help you reach your or exceed your biggest goals. Don't forget to visit the Move Crush Count channel on YouTube and movecrushcount.com. Make sure you subscribe, follow the show on Instagram. And if you're interested in connecting with others who are passionate about business and leadership, join our Facebook group. And of course, I want you to visit LotPop, and you can see it scrolling there, at the bottom, lotpop.com, and also sandycerami.com. Make sure, let's not forget our gracious co-host
We appreciate
for joining us as well.
But I have to say this, Scott, if you're a dealer out there or a manager and you're not on the LotPop platform, you need to go to the website right now, because as I said when we kicked off the show, the thing that impressed me the most as I did some research is that Jason's entire platform is built off of a strategy, a fundamental strategy that delivers results. And the platform itself is the amplification piece. If you're not looking at these guys, take the time and get in touch with them and do yourself a favor.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to our next leadership retreat, Jason. We appreciate you coming. I think
I can't wait.
You're going to add a lot to those tables, and I think the dealers are going to appreciate it. And quite honestly, I think you'll be amazed at what you get back from the dealers in terms of how it can help you as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's really a two-way street.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Incredible.
it. Looking
If
forward
you've
to it.
enjoyed this episode, we grow organically here. So please take a moment, leave us a review. If you did not enjoy this episode, just tune in to the next time and hopefully you'll enjoy that one, and then you can leave a review. So we only want
Or
reviews
just,
from the
if
people
you
that
didn't enjoy it, blame it on Sandy.
Yes.
Floating head.
But your support helps us reach a lot more listeners. It also helps us continue to bring the type of content and information that you want. And finally, a big thank you to our sponsor, J&L Marketing, for supporting the Move Crush Count podcast. If you're looking for a partner that'll help you outsmart the competition so you don't have to outspend them, be sure to check out J&L Marketing. That's jnlmarketing.com. And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you for joining us and sharing this time with us. Until next time, keep crushing it.